This is part 4 of my Outlander Season 7, Episode 10 review. If you are looking to avoid spoilers from the books or the show, please do keep on scrolling. So when Claire returns back to Lord John's house, she is met by him and a visitor in the parlor, which is a little different than the books where she is with Marcelly. I did a video where I talked briefly about the differences in the Marcelly and Fergus storyline between the show and the books at this point. And in the books, Claire came back to Philadelphia to tend to her grandson, Henri Christian, and they seem to be writing that whole kind of story out of the show. And so this scene in the books takes place at Marcelly and Fergus's house, and obviously it's in Lord John's parlor in the show. But the scene plays out pretty similarly in the books and the show, which is that Claire suspects that something bad has happened to Henry or John's niece Dottie because he is so distraught when he sees her at the door. And instead he tells her that the ship that Jamie was scheduled to come over on is lost with all hands, and she immediately is in denial. I really loved how they filmed this scene where Claire just becomes instantly disassociated from reality, and she's hearing the same phrases over and over in her head, and she's zeroing in on really specific parts of clothing or movements that people are making in the room, but she's not able to actually stay conscious or with it, and is completely in her own world trying to wrap her head around this news. And I thought they filmed it in a very effective way. Details like having them show her Jamie's signature on the list of people scheduled to be on the boat, all of those things really add to the gravity of the situation and how that would just feel like a literal, pun intended, wave of information hitting her all at once and just rendering her completely useless and overwhelmed. Now again, in the books, Jenny is coming over on the boat with Jamie. She instantly decides to go to America after Ian's passing, but they purposefully didn't put her name here, so it's leaving kind of that will they, won't they, for book readers of whether or not Jenny will be joining him in America. And I just have to say, like, A+ for Katrina Balfe and for David Barry in this scene. I think they both just absolutely nailed it. Like, the single tear rolling down her cheek was just heartbreaking. And keep in mind, like, obviously Claire and Jamie are married and they have the most ridiculously romantic relationship ever, but Lord John Grey has loved Jamie in a way that Claire recognizes and understands for so long. And so for him to receive this news breaks his heart too, and then to have to deliver it to his wife is just so heartbreaking. And I just think he does a wonderful job delivering it. The scene was so poignant to me. I'm curious for people who didn't read the books if this hit you heavy because you didn't know it was coming. They did some foreshadowing in the trailers, but still, like, I would be curious if this scene landed for you, because I read the books and I think it brought a lot more life into the scene than the passage in the books did. The scene was rather short in the books, and they added more dialogue and they added more physicality in the show, and I really appreciated that. And both Claire and Lord John go into mourning, and we see Claire just rendered again completely useless, and John is dealing with it in his own way. And again, he has so many more people relying on him in this moment in time. So he's kind of going through the motions as well and trying to check in on her as best he can, but she just feels like, I don't want to be here anymore. And in the books, they do go into a lot more detail about her feeling that very, very deep depression and her internal dialogue that she has. Do I pick up the ether again? She has some dark, dark thoughts in the book. There's some time that has presumably passed, and Lord John gets a visit from Captain Richardson, Ezekiel Richardson, who you will recall is the captain who gave William his orders at the beginning of this season. John's brother Hal in the books makes it very clear to William that working for him might not be the smartest decision, and that he is someone who you should be careful of. Now, in the books, he pulls Lord John aside and they have a very similar conversation as to how it plays out in the show. Whereas he's inquiring as to the relationship between John and Claire and tells him that he plans to arrest her for being a spy and for taking part in the passing of messages for people. Now, even though Claire only did the one letter, she is then associated with all of the work that Mercy did prior to her. So he's saying this has been happening for months all around Philadelphia. And Lord John immediately goes into crisis mode, which is what I love him for, and starts to kind of subtly get all the details so that he can come up with a course of action here to get Claire out of this danger. After he has the conversation with Richardson, he immediately goes to find Claire and says to her, "You need to marry me," to which she says the exact same in the show, "You can't possibly have said what I think you just said." Claire has been in mourning in her room, and I really loved in this scene, she reminded me a lot of what she looked like when they were in France with her like loose, curly, long hair. I just thought she looked so beautiful in the scene. But they have their whole conversation about why it is necessary for her to marry Lord John. He admits to Claire that this would be the last service he can render Jamie Fraser, is to protect Claire and the people associated with her, because now it involves young Ian, it involves Denzel and Rachel, it involves William in many ways. So he's using, again, like at the beginning of the episode when I mentioned he is not under commission, but he wears the uniform to protect the people around him, and now it is being used for that reason yet again, now that Claire is put in this position, and he's doing the right thing, the noble thing, once again, because that is just to his core who Lord John is. This whole scene plays out very similarly to how it's written in the books, but I think that both Katrina Balfe and David Barry know their characters so well at this point that it just feels so raw and believable. And I think David Barry in this episode, and really any episode he's in, is just a standout for me personally. I think he's just so great. And I'm very, very excited for the next episode, and probably the one after that, because I think that's when some shit hits the fan and we'll kind of see the repercussions of Claire's decision here and how that plays out with Lord John and herself. So yeah, I really, really enjoyed this episode, and in particular this scene. They did have a preview for next week's episode. I can do a breakdown of that if people are curious or interested, but let me know in the comments what you thought about episode 10. What were your favorite parts? What parts did you not like? Was there anything you were confused about? I'd be happy to do a character profile video for any of the characters you want to learn more about. I'm thinking I'll do one on Denzel or Rachel if people are interested. So let me know in the comments what your thoughts are.